Hey guys, welcome back to Father and Son Investing. We're going to talk about Pfizer today. There really is so much going on with Pfizer that it would be difficult to cover in the 7 minutes that I want to allocate for this video. So I'm just going to hit some of the highlights. Stay tuned. First of all, this was me way back in March of this year talking about Pfizer. The stock at the time was $34.71. And I was explaining how Pfizer was relatively cheap, trading at about 10 times price to earnings. We fast forward to August and we see that the price now is just shy of $50 per share. Fantastic increase in the share price. So that is the first thing that I want to cover with Pfizer. The share price is obviously increasing. How high can it continue to go? What should we expect? Well, based on the things that I'm reading, I think that we could expect that the share price for Pfizer could increase 100% over the next 5 years. Why do I say that? Well, obviously, the big moneymaker for Pfizer right now is the COVID-19 vaccine. And unless you are on a different planet, you probably are well aware that the FDA approved the COVID-19 vaccine today. What does that mean? That means that it is no longer on the emergency use authorization. This has been shown to be effective and safe and has been fully approved within the United States. That approval is going to start to drive more demand for this vaccine as entities such as the United States military are mandating that their members become vaccinated. You may have seen that United Airlines is stating that all of their employees will be vaccinated. And that is going to happen more and more and more with companies as these vaccines become FDA approved, the Pfizer one being the first one. So just how much money is this vaccine generating for Pfizer? Well, the Pfizer revenues grew 86% in Q2 of this year. If we exclude the impact of the vaccine, the revenues only grew by 10% operationally in Q2 this year. So we can see that almost all of the revenue growth for 2021 is happening from the vaccine. That may have some investors concerned. They're thinking, okay, this is making a lot of money now, but what about in a couple of years when COVID is under control? I think that may be putting the cart before the horse a little bit. I'm not sure that in a couple of years COVID will be under control. I think there's a good chance that this virus becomes endemic, meaning that it will always be around, kind of like the influenza, and having to have yearly vaccines. If the COVID vaccine isn't enough for you, let me give you another reason why. Pfizer recently had their tick-borne encephalitis vaccine approved within the United States. Now, tick-borne encephalitis isn't that common. It's mostly occurs in Europe and in Asia, but there are a lot of travelers from America going to these regions of the world, and they don't want to get this disease. While it isn't that common, the effects of it can be devastating. And having this vaccine is about 96% effective at preventing tick-borne encephalitis. How much does the vaccine cost? If we conservatively say $60 per dose, and it's a 3-dose regimen with a potential 4th dose booster, and there are potentially 5 million Americans per year that are going to be getting this vaccine, we could be looking at $1 billion in revenue occurring from this vaccine alone. Now, if that isn't enough for you, then let's look at what else is happening with Pfizer right now. They have a number of their products that will be coming to market soon, hopefully. Of course, they always have to pass through these clinical phase trials, but they are doing this. The next drug that may be coming out, hopefully, by the end of this year is going to be this oral protease COVID-19 drug. That would be happening on the emergency authorization use. Now, there are a lot of people in the world who either have not had the vaccine made available to them yet or are refusing or hesitant to get this COVID-19 vaccine, and that's where this drug may come into play. The addressable market is potentially hundreds of millions of patients. What this drug does is interrupts the viral life cycle by making it impossible for the virus to make some of the proteins that it needs in order to replicate itself. The phase 2/3 study was started in July of this year, and again, potentially for emergency use authorization Q4 of 2021. Now, what else do they have coming? They're working on a vaccine for Lyme disease. Obviously, that is an important disease here within the United States. They're working on an RSV adult vaccine, respiratory syncytial virus. Of course, that affects a lot of children. They're working on the adult version of that vaccine. And then they're working on an mRNA flu vaccine, trying to use the same technology that they have been using for the COVID-19 vaccine. Now, if all of those things aren't enough for you to think that they may be able to double their revenue within the next 5 years, then let's talk about the big news today. Pfizer has made an offer to buy out Trillium Therapeutics for $2 billion and some change. Now, what does Trillium do, and why are their drugs so important, and why is Pfizer willing to pay up for this? Of course, Trillium's stock closed at about $6 per share last Friday and opened up today about $18 per share. Trillium has two big investigational drugs that they are hoping to bring to market, and we're going to cover just kind of quickly what these things can do and why it could be a huge moneymaker for Pfizer. So in this picture here, this is one of your white blood cells, and this is, say, a cancer cell. Now, these cancer cells try to trick the white blood cells into not eating them by displaying some proteins on their surface that essentially signal the cell, do not eat me. Now, Trillium is developing two antibodies that can potentially attach to that site on the cancer cell that's saying, do not eat me. And then through this third leg of the antibody, be able to tell the white blood cell, eat me. So essentially, they're converting the do not eat me signal to the eat me signal. These two different cells have different potency, so that one will be a very strong activating signal for the white blood cell to destroy the cancer cell, and one will be a little more modest activating signal. These drugs are in the CD47 class, and you will hear more and more about these within the news probably in the coming years. Why is this such a big deal? Because it is a new class of drugs that potentially can act as monotherapy, meaning just this drug alone, but also could be used as a dual therapy in conjunction with, say, another antibody drug or with chemotherapy. Now, this ultimately could prove to be a huge bargain for Pfizer. This CD47 blockade, while Trillium is not the first in class, may end up being the best in class. They have some things that make their product particularly beneficial, including that it doesn't bind to red blood cells. Gilead, just as an example, bought out a company called 47 recently for more than $4 billion. 47 is a little farther ahead in this class of drugs, but again, ultimately, Trillium may have the best in class and not necessarily first in class. All of these reasons and more are why Pfizer stock in the next 5 years could be over $100 per share. Another great thing about Pfizer stock is that they do pay a dividend. It currently is 3.12%. Just to wrap this up, what potentially could go wrong for Pfizer and maybe not allow them to double their stock price in the next 5 years? Well, they do have some drugs that will be losing their U.S. patent protection in the next few years. Xeljanz, that patent protection expires in 2025. Their pneumococcal vaccine, Prevnar 13, as well as the blood thinner Eliquis, will lose their U.S. patent protection in 2026. And then they have a breast cancer drug, Ibrance, as well as a prostate cancer drug that will lose their patent exclusivity in 2027. If for some reason Pfizer cannot keep drugs coming through the pipeline, then of course we may see a rather rapid drop-off of their revenues. I personally don't think that's going to happen. Pfizer has, as you would see in my previous video, had a wonderful increase in the number of drugs, or at least the percentage of drugs that they are bringing to market all the way. It's about 20% of the ones that they start with that end up making it through all of the clinical phases and coming to market. All right, let's wrap this up. Pfizer, $49.93 per share. I love it. In fact, let's just wrap this up with their Q2 financial guidance. They actually increased their revenue estimate. They're looking at 78 to 80 billion versus the 70 to 72 that they were estimating earlier this year. Their adjusted diluted earnings per share, we're looking at 395 to 405 per share, which previously was estimated to be 355 to 365 per share. I think it's a fantastic company. I'm going to be buying some more of it. Take a look at it and decide whether this is right for you. Obviously, this is not financial guidance. If you're a young investor, I think this is a great stock to potentially be invested in as it continues to grow over the next 30 or 40 years. Until next time, enjoy your investing.